Good morning. Welcome to Tanya Live. We are back Tuesday mornings, 9:45. Interactive Tanya learning. And I'm glad you're going to be joining us. We will start, of course, with giving tzedakah. And we say these words, Gedel tzedakah shemekareves es ha'geula. Put it in your coin, starting a brand new tzedakah box there. And we will say Tehillim for all those who need a refuah shalema. And please, if you don't mind, putting down names of people that need a refuah shalema, that would be very helpful. Keep in mind anyone that you know that needs help financially, emotionally, spiritually. So many people we need to daven for. And so as we say our Tehillim, we're going to have all those people in mind. Yaakov Moshe Benecha, and so many others. Please put down their names. We have Yitzchak Esther, Yitzchak Bet Esther Malka Leah. Okay, Leah Bas Chava. Okay, please feel free to jot down any names that we should say Tehillim for today. Okay, Shoshana Basima. Okay, chapter 20. Good morning, everyone. Lamratseach Mizmar LeDavid Yancha Adonai B'Yom Tzara Yisadefcha Shem Elahei Yaakov Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh U'Mitzion Yisadeka Yiskar Kol Mechosecha V'Loscha Yidash Nesela Yitein Lecha Chavavecha V'Chol Atzascha Yimale Nirana B'Shuasecha U'V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgol Yimalei Adonai Kol Mishalosecha Ata yadati ki Hoshia Adonai Meshicho Yaneu Mishmei Kocha B'Gvuras Yesha Yimino Ele v'recha ve'ele v'asusim v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu naskir Hem akaru v'nafalu v'anachnu kamnu v'nisodad Adonai Hoshia Hamelach Yanenu v'yom karenu. I'll read the last 2 or 3 lines in English. Now I know that the Lord has delivered his anointed one, answering him from his holy heavens with the mighty saving power of his right hand. Some rely upon chariots and some upon horses, but we rely upon and invoke the name of the Lord our God. They bend and fall, but we rise and stand firm. Hashem, deliver us. May the King answer us on the day we call. And we so ask Hashem, please, to send a fruish lema to Alta Bas Rivka, Chaim ben Sarabela. Okay, I'm just looking for a few more. Okay, so I think we daven for all of those that were down here. And of course, my first question to you this morning is, how are you feeling today? A glorious Tuesday with a snowstorm outside that was threatening to close schools, but I'm glad that the Jewish schools actually are stayed open today. And I'm glad because I think our children need to be back in school. I think they need to be back there for their emotional well-being, their psychological well-being, and I think the mothers need a little break. So I'm glad that we were able to be in school today, and that's why my shul scenery is behind me, and we're ready to go. Good morning, Bettina. Good morning, Evelyn, Dorit, Arlene. Okay, I don't see everyone's names here yet. Corinne says gloomy. Corinne, it's not a gloomy day. If you're up and you're breathing and you have a roof over your head and we're studying Tanya, think about it. In the days of the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, you couldn't even learn publicly Tanya. They had to go in these tiny basements, in a cellar, in a dark, dingy cellar, and make sure that there were people that were outside your door so that nobody could be discovered studying Torah. Hey, good morning, Miriam. Nice to see you. So we are very blessed that we are living in a time of freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And good morning, Becky from Israel. Good morning. And hopefully we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. Arlene, thank you for that beautiful compliment. I'm looking to see how else everyone's feeling. I see we have a lot of good vibes. Because, yeah, it's all about gratefulness. And maybe give me a thumbs up and tell me how many of you said the Moda'ani this morning. How many of you woke up and said Moda Ani this morning, which really is the beginning of a grateful day? It's all about gratitude. Moda Ani lefanecha. Thank you, Hashem. I'm grateful to you, God. Give me a thumbs up. Oh, I see a lot of people have been davening this morning. Oh, thank you. Because that davening, Moda Ani, sets you on the right tone. Yeah, you might wake up in the morning and you look outside, it's snowing, and the radio tells you it's minus 15, and maybe you have a backache, and maybe you're not in the mood, but you said Moda Ani, and the moment you said Moda Ani, Hashem responds back with Moda. You show that Moda Ani to Hashem. Good morning, Sandra. When you say good morning to Hashem, Hashem sends you back a Moda Ani. Rabba emunasecha. We thank Hashem that He has emunah. What does emunah mean? Put that down in the chat. What does the word emunah mean? Because Hashem is giving us Rabba emunasecha. He's giving us an abundance of emunah. Chana says, Moda Ani, since she's been listening with us. Good, we've all been learning together. That's right. Thank you, Chana. What does Rabba emunasecha mean, and why is it so important? Faith. Not that we have faith in Hashem. Hashem has faith in me. Now think about it for a second. From an adult's point of view, very good, Chana. Thank you, Corinne. An adult's point of view. Remember when you were a child and you couldn't do something? I don't know, maybe you couldn't tie your shoes, or maybe you couldn't brush your hair, and then your mom said, I have faith in you that you could do it. What did that do to you? Did that suddenly give you the ability to make your hair? No. It gave you the ability to have the drive to try, because you knew your parent had faith in you. When we say the Moda Ani, and if you don't say Moda Ani yet every morning, I beg you, start. Because Moda Ani is that adrenaline that Hashem gives you. And He says, I have faith in you. There you go. I have motivation. It gives you motivation. God has belief in us, and He knows we're going to have a great day. And He knows that we're going to be a positive person today. And He knows we're going to tune into Tanya. And He knows we're going to give tzedakah. These are the reasons we say Moda Ani. Everyone knows today it's all about journaling. You know, you walk into any bookstore. That's if you walked into a bookstore for the last 6 months. But when the bookstores were open, or if you're scrolling on Amazon, Francesca, that is going to be a class one day. We're going to learn the difference between Emunah and Betachon. There's a big difference, and that is definitely going to be a class that we are going to talk about. I'm going to write it down here because it's a whole class in itself. And because we know that journaling is part of a grateful way of living. There are many people out there that are making millions of dollars just selling the idea of journaling. Well, we have the journaling idea way before anybody opened up an Indigo or Barnes and Nobles. We know that part of having a beautiful day and a successful day is by being grateful. And we say it immediately. Now, I know there are people that are journaling, but they're journaling at 2, 3 in the afternoon. Hashem says, gotta start journaling right when you open your eyes. Even before you touch your mouth, definitely before you touch your phone, you say Moda Ani. And that is first entry into my journal. Moda Ani lefanecha. Thank you, Hashem, that you return my soul, my neshama, to me, the chemla, with wonderful mercy and compassion. Rabba Munasecha. Thank you for your faith in me. And now I'm going to have a great day. And any child, listen, I run a preschool here. And I've had years where children walked in and you could see the parents didn't have faith in them. There wasn't positivity and motivation in their home. The child wasn't being raised with emunah, that there was a parent that trusted, and they would walk in, and they would walk in, and they would walk in like this. Then you had a child who walked into school exuberant, excited, motivated. You knew at that home there were parents that were saying, go for it. You can do this. You're my son. You're my daughter. And that child is living and breathing the confidence that his mom and dad gives him. So that's what Rabba Munasecha, and that's what Ani is. But we are in chapter, who remembers what chapter we're up to in Tanya? Perek Aleph Tanya. We are already way past Perek Aleph Tanya. We are, anybody remember which chapter? Let me see how many of you remember. Okay. Looking to see how many remember. We are up to chapter 43. Wow. And our last chapter, we spoke about keeping a reverence for God. Hey, good morning, Tamara. How's the weather in South Africa? Well, Hannah and Arlene, almost. We are up to chapter 43. In chapter 42, good. In chapter 42, we spoke about the awe of God, that respect and awe are two important credentials to having a relationship and being a good Jew. But now we're going to talk about how do we get that awe? How do we get to have awe of God? You know, when we talk about gratitude and motivation, sometimes we become very confident in ourselves, and then is there space for awe of God? Is there room for awareness that God created this magnificent world, this entire universe, all the galaxies? God was in charge of that. Are we able to inculcate within us and incorporate within us the full spectrum of reverence? And that's what our class will talk about today, because many people have said, yeah, I'd love to have awe of God, but how do I get there? How do I get there? So there's a lot of interesting ideas which we're going to cover today. And it reminds me, actually, good morning, Elaine, good morning. It reminds me when I was a child, and you could tell me with a thumbs up or in the comments, if you said this little pasuk, this little verse, when you davened, if you went to a Jewish school, we used to sing like this, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. I always see Hashem before me. He watches everything I do. He watches over me and you. I remember saying this when I was 5, 6. Must have said it through mid-elementary years. Then I say it quietly to myself. Do you see the benefit in a child or in a human being saying those words? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. I always see Hashem before me. Give me a thumbs up if you think this is a powerful statement, or you think it's not important, it's not something that's needed. We are fine, we get it. We don't really need to know that God is over us. We know it intrinsically. Do you believe that it's an important prayer to say? Yes or no? Put it into the comments. Because I'll share with you an experiment that was done at university. It was in the boys' dormitory, and they found that the kitchen in this dormitory was absolutely a filth. The men in this dormitory never cleaned up after themselves. And so they decided to do a study and to figure out why was it that they weren't cleaning up after themselves. There were signs everywhere that said, clean up, please clean up afterwards, throw your dishes here, put your garbage in the garbage. There were signs everywhere, but why was it that in this dormitory they weren't cleaning up? So they did this experiment where they put, instead of posters of please clean up, they put posters with 2 eyes. 2 eyes. And they found that there was a 40% increase in cleaning. 40% of the cleaning actually improved because there were eyes, just eyes on a picture, but there were eyes that were watching. Now, that's very fascinating. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I always see Hashem watching over me. Just the awareness that there were eyes. There was another experiment that was done with a computer game. And they actually had two groups. And this computer game interspersed with opportunities to do kindness. They found that when there were robots watching, at that point, people gave more charity and did more good. I need someone to explain to me in the comments, why is it that when eyes are watching, either eyes on a picture, robot's eyes, not even a human eyes, are people more conscious and people are more kind? Karine says, if a person knows someone watching, they react differently. Yes, there is something about having an eye that watches. And we're told a verse, Ayin ro'eh, ozen shamas. A person should live their life with the awareness that there is an eye that watches and there is an ear that listens. And this is the way a Jew is supposed to lead their life. Not being scared, but the awareness. Okay, Dorit says eyes are the window to the soul. That's true, and that's excellent. Awe of Hashem is the awareness that there is an eye that watches. And I think I'd like to expand on that a little bit more. Because there's a pasuk that says, if you have awe, you will get wisdom. If you have wisdom, you will get awe. Well, which one comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Right? We have to be thinking now. Wait, do I need awe to get wisdom of the Torah? Or do I need wisdom of the Torah to get awe? Well, which one comes first? Good morning, Karen. So today we're going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about what comes first. And in fact, one of our great teachers and masters by the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived in the time of the Roman era, he actually says, may the fear of God, of heaven, be as real to you as the fear of people. In a way, like you think to yourself, am I more worried about humans than I are of God? Like, is that so uncomfortable with us? I'm more worried about what my neighbor or my husband or my colleague is going to say more than God? Is that how low of a level we're at? But Yochanan ben Zakkai says that's human nature. That is the human condition. I mean, think about it. There are people today that have joint accounts, let's say, to go onto internet. And they say the reason they do that is so that their spouse doesn't go on sites that are inappropriate. It keeps them from going from perhaps X-rated sites or watching things that are wrong. So we know, the Torah has taught us this many times, and we've learned that a person should be careful of the things they see, because what you see, like someone just said, eyes are the window to the soul. What you see reflects your neshama. And when you look at inappropriate things, it reflects and it actually affects your neshama. It affects your neshama, which affects your brain, your mind, your cognizant, and then it affects your action. So we always are careful about the things that we put up in our children's bedrooms, the books that we let them look at, the magazines. I mean, these are things, that's what a Jew does. We are careful about the things we bring into our home, the kinds of movies we allow our families to watch. But what about a spouse that, okay, they don't go on the internet or they don't watch certain things because they don't want someone to see, but Hashem is watching. Why is that a difference? And yet that is the human condition. Yochanan ben Zakkai was very aware, although he was a great, brilliant Torah scholar, he says, I wish that you would have the fear of heaven like you have the fear of people. Eyes are blamed for ayin hara, that's true. So we are very, very aware that we have to be careful of what we see, but also being aware that what watches us is important, but not as important as who is watching. And that is Hashem is watching. You know, I remember standing at a convenience store. It's very upsetting. I was standing in the store waiting to buy something. And this was I would say in a Jewish neighborhood. And the kids at the street had just had their recess. And they were coming in to buy some nash. And I was standing there, a bunch of kids were in front of me. Now, if you know the convenience stores in Toronto, there's the counter where the salesperson is standing and with the cashier and the cash register. And then right behind that, there's a whole row of chocolate bars and candies and licorice and nibs and all these Mars bars. And if you stand against this thing, the owner of the store can't see what you're touching. And there were children standing there, and I was watching how they were trying to put things into their pockets. And I gave them such a scolding. And I know it's not my place, but I looked at them and I said, did you pay for that? Are you taking that without paying? And it could have been that they were daring each other. I know they come from Jewish homes, I'm sure. Dan l'kafschus, I'm sure they were taught by their parents. But what they don't have was that awareness, Shivisi Hashem L'nei Summit. Because in the public schools, they don't teach our children that there's a God that's watching. You know, one of the things the Rebbe was begging for, he was begging the American government to change, to have the 10 Commandments up in the schools. So, and then a moment of silence. The children should know that there is a God that's watching. Because even if you do things because our eye is watching and it's not coming because of your intrinsic good, that's okay. If your action is good because of a result that there is an eye that's watching or an awareness that God is watching, that's okay. Because we train ourselves when we're young that there's an eye that watches and that Hashem is watching you wherever you go. And you know, Dorit, you're saying I'm brave. It wasn't I was brave. I was like disgusted that these Jewish children, and they clearly, you could see they were Jewish children, that they had no awareness that stealing was wrong. Stealing is wrong not only because you are taking away from someone's parnasa. Stealing is wrong because it's one of the 10 Commandments, because it's not yours. And so awe of God is something that we have to teach our children from the moment they're young. They wake up in the morning, and as soon as they wake up, we sing with them, Modeh ani lefanecha. And then when they start praying, we sing, Shema Yisrael, Torah Tziva, Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. We inculcate, and yes, you know what, maybe it is brainwashing. We're brainwashing our children that there's a God that watches. But that, what Tanya is telling us in this chapter is very interesting. It's telling us that this is a lower reverence. So there's 2 levels of awe, and that's what I want to touch upon today. There are 2 levels of Yirat Hashem. Remember what Yirat Hashem is? Give me a thumbs up if you remember Yirat Hashem. There are 2 levels of Yirat Hashem. The first one is the lower reverence. Yeah, Becky, I have no problem if someone tells me you brainwashed your kids to believe in a God. You brainwashed your kids to believe Hashem is watching. You brainwashed your kids not to steal and not to hurt others and not to talk Lashon Hara. Yes, I am guilty of brainwashing my children of the Torah. And I'm fine with that because there's a lot of brainwashing going on in the world for negative things. Look at the commercials. Look at all the TV shows. That's brainwashing. Not in a good thing. Not in a positive trajectory, but definitely it's brainwashing. Our children are playing games today because they've been brainwashed. Our children are using lingos and words today because they've been brainwashed. Our children are eating foods today because they've been brainwashed. So as Torah moms, let's brainwash our children in the right way. Thank you for bringing that up, Becky. Hello, Tanya. So, that's my friend Tanya. Thank you for joining, Tanya. Tanya, thank you for joining, Tanya. So, we talked today about low reverence and higher reverence. And as I mentioned before, the Mishnah says, if there's no reverence, there's no wisdom. And if there's no wisdom, there's no reverence. So this is going to answer our question, what comes first? The chicken or the egg? Well, the first wisdom we're going to inculcate in our children is going to be the lower reverence. That is the awareness that there is an eye that watches. That is low reverence, but that's okay. Okay, that's an interesting question. Louisa says, what do you say when your kids tell you that you are teaching them to fear if they break a commandment, they will be struck down? That is a brilliant question. And actually, Louisa, I'm going to answer that, even though it's a little bit of a tangent. When we say there's an eye that watches, we are not saying that you are going to be struck down. What we're saying is the awareness that there is a God is enough for you to behave. In other words, I remember as a child, we'd be in class and we'd behave a certain way. As soon as the teachers went out, we'd be jumping around. And the teachers came back in, we quickly clambered back to get to our seats. Were we scared that we were going to be struck down? No, but we were scared that the teacher would catch us and say, you are out of line. You have misbehaved. That awareness that we were going to be caught, that was a lower reverence. Yes, Louisa, that is a lower reverence. And that is why, by the way, Tanya says we should not teach our children that method as being the ultimate Yiras Hashem. What a great statement, because that is the segue into what I'm going to be teaching today. We are not Jews that are doing a mitzvah because we are scared we're going to be struck down. Oh, we're going to get to that too. Good. It's pasnish. You guys are way ahead of me today. We're going to have a really long class here because you're striking on all the things, and I hope we'll get to everything today. But there's always a next week, right? When we teach our children about Hashem is watching, that is about the awareness that God who created you, Rabba Emunasecha, the God that trusts you, the God that loves you, is watching you. And you don't want to upset him. You don't want to be disillusioning the God that just gave you back your life. He knows, Rabbi Munasecha, he knows that you have a full day in front of you and there is so much you have to accomplish. You know, Rabbi Twersky, one of the greatest people that lived in our generation, passed away last week at the age of 90. He tells a story. And he tells a story that when he was raised by his parents, he was never told, you better do this or you're going to be punished. You better do this, you're going to be, thrown out of school. He would say to him these words. And you could tell me if it were a thumbs up if you have ever heard this expression. Es pasnish. Have you ever heard that terminology? It's in Yiddish. Es pasnish. Es pasnish means it is not fitting for you. And anytime he did anything wrong, his father would say to him, Sheila, you? It's pasnish. You know what kind of family you come from? And when you tell this to your children, you come from our family. We're a family that is kind. We're a family that's honest. We're a family that is giving. It's pasnish. It's not befitting to you. And if your children are already older, you can try this with your grandchildren. If they do something, just say to them the words, it's past nicht. It's not fitting for you. And when a child sees that you have such awe and respect for them, that you are sure they are going to behave appropriate, they live up to your expectations. Children live up to the standards that you set for them. And if you set a standard that's high, they will live up to that standard. If there's a certain way you expect them to behave, a certain kind of dressing you expect them to dress, you expect them when they find something to give back. You do Hashem Zaveda because you have set that tone in your home. That's what the stage you're living. That's the way you walk the walk. Then your child knows it's not something they have to be scared of, and it's not something that they're expected to do that they've never seen from you. Your children have seen it. They know that their parent doesn't steal, their parent doesn't talk badly, their parent doesn't swear, their parent doesn't use negative language, their parent doesn't talk behind others' back. So when they do, all you have to say is pasnish. Why? Because Hashem created you, and He expects of you a higher level of living. It's such a powerful statement when we use that with our children. Not proper for someone, or not proper at all. Oh, espasnish means it's not appropriate for you, and of course not appropriate for anyone. We Jews have a very high standard of living. Let's face it. We have a code of law that has 613 mitzvahs. It is the highest standard out there. The rest of the world doesn't have such a high standard. And okay, so Francesca, it's not asur. I mean, there are some things that are asur. We don't eat meat and milk together. That is asur. That is forbidden. But espasnish is not really for things that are asur, because asur is forbidden. There's no way, shape, or form we can give our children treif. Our children have a certain diet as a Jew, and God forbid we're not allowed to give them dairy after they had a meat meal. That's asur. But espasnish is more like man-to-man interactions, saying inappropriate things, not eating with manners, taking something from a store without asking. You don't assume they would steal, but even the assumption, twirling your eyes. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah you're not allowed to roll your eyes when a parent talks to you, okay? But how many children today, and teenagers specifically, when a parent talks to them, they roll their eyes like this? The facial expression? Those behaviors are not written in the Torah, but they are not appropriate for you. They are not appropriate for a Jewish child, espasnished. We're talking a little bit more than that. We're talking about actual Torah forbidden things that maybe a child isn't aware of, and we need to instill in them. So as a young child, because they don't have the cognitive abilities yet to understand God, the lower reverence that we're talking about, the lower awe, is when we say there's an eye that watches. That is for a young child. Yes, it is perhaps maybe intimidating, but so is a teacher sitting over the child in class. That might be intimidating. I was watching my grandchildren on Zoom. They don't behave like they would in a classroom. They're moving around, they're on the chair, they're off the chair. One of my children was putting eyeglasses on him during, doing all kinds of these background stuff. In class, they behave different. There is a teacher that's watching. There might be a principal that will walk in. Let's be real. Young children have to know that there is an eye that watches. There's a joke about these two boys that they couldn't handle school. Wherever they went, every school they went into, they were thrown out for misbehaving. Finally, the parents said, it's time for us to put them into a Catholic school because there's no other school that wants them. They were kicked out of all the public schools. They were kicked out of all the Jewish schools. We have no choice. So this kid goes into school, and the first day of school, he's an angel. Parents are shocked. Gets a note home. What are you talking about? Your child has perfect behavior. So the parent says, well, maybe it was the first day of school. Second day comes back, absolutely perfect behavior. Parents are stumped. Like, what is going on? So they call in their little boy and they say, hey, little Joey, what is going on in that school that you're behaving so well? And they said, well, we saw that there was a guy hanging on a stick up there when you walked in, and we were petrified, so we behaved. Clearly that's going way too far. Way too far. We don't have those things hanging in our schools. But what we do have to know is that our children have to know that there's a mezuzah on the door that's watching you and watching how good you behave. Not from fear, but from reverence. And Louisa, we're talking about awe. Okay, so I don't know if you were in the last few classes. We spoke about Yirat Hashem is not fear of God. Tanya takes a whole different approach. We don't raise our children to have fear of God. Trepidation. We don't want to raise our children to be scared of God. We're talking about awe. Awe is something that you respect someone. because you are in awe of them, or maybe of their stature, of maybe a Rebbe who's a great tzaddik, or a teacher who has amazing qualities, or a parent who is so kind. There's awe that is not fear, it's of reverence. And that's why the Alter Rebbe in Tanya uses the word reverence and not fear. And that is something we have to be very, very, very clear to our children and to ourselves. We're not scared of God. We're not doing mitzvahs because we are scared of God. We are doing mitzvahs because we love Hashem and we respect Him. I thought I was going to get to a lot more today, but I do want to perhaps talk a little bit about how we can get that awareness of God, this love of God. So we know that when God created the world, He created all the animals and insects in what? In ones or twos? Okay, you can put that in the comments if you know the answer. When God created the world, God created all the animals and insects and birds and fowl. Everything was created in twos, male and female. But human, He created one. He created Adam. And the Talmud in Mishnah Sanhedrin in chapter 4 says, why? Why was human created only in singular? Why not in twos? Thank you, all you smart teacher people out there. I love this interactive class. Why was God creating one human? And we were told, yes, it was an androgynous being. God was created Adam with male and female attached to each other. But why one human being? Because the Mishnah says, because a human being, it says, Chayav Adam Lomar, Bishvili Nivra et Aholam. A human being is commanded to say, Bishvili Nivrat Haolam. The world was created for me. And when a human being has that awareness that the whole world was created for him, he knows that he has a responsibility in this world. Yes, it could be very, very, very egocentric perhaps to feel the world was created for you, but it's also a massive responsibility that God created you with a huge responsibility to have awe, to have reverence, and have reverence for Hashem and reverence for God and reverence for others. Louisa says, kids, I feel, want to please God, but with all our laws, it can be easy to break. Celebrating Shabbat as kids get older can be tricky. The discussions that can go on are powerful. Well, Louisa, what a very important thing for us to do is to raise our children. Listen, my children were raised here in Markham. In the beginning, there was no one that was keeping Shabbat. For years, they were the only ones. We made Shabbat the best day of the week, the best food, like literally, the best breads, the best challah, the best side dishes. We had nash and cakes, and we always had guests. We made it a fun day. And when you make Shabbat a day of joy, and it's not, Louisa, there was a fellow that came to the Rebbe. If you go on gem.com, Jem, and you'll see all the different conversations people had with the Rebbe. There was a man that came to the Rebbe and he said, I need a blessing that my children should follow my path. Oh yes, it's schwer zu sein a Yid. What does that mean? Oh, it's so hard to be a Jew. And the Rebbe said to him, does your child hear that a lot? And he goes, yeah. And he says, well, maybe if you didn't say that, but you show them the joy of being a Yid, the greatness, the luckiness, is that a word? The opportunities, the level of gratitude we should have, how lucky we are that we are Jews. Then your child will say, it's not hard to be a Jew. We were handpicked. Think about the child in the class that has extra responsibilities because he's the smartest in the class. And the teacher says, you're in charge of the board and you're in charge. Now, it could be extra responsibilities, The yodel in the back has to do nothing, but the kid who's the smartest, or the kid that's the most talented, or the kid that's the best behaved, he gets extra responsibilities. Is that poor you? Is that oivei? No. That child was chosen because they are the best. We were chosen because Hashem said, you, my children, are the best because you were going to take my Torah and you accepted my Torah. It's not hard. It's how lucky you are. You know, there are so many, talking now about homes and trustees and people making sure that, you know, the parents have right, Hashem comes every lunch for Shabbat, so you can imagine the table we set. Beautiful, Miriam. So we have a trustee, right? Usually when you're making a will, you always have the oldest child or the most responsible child to be the trustee. Well, that does give them extra responsibility, but it's an honor to be the trustee. It's hard to make Shabbat special, so I would recommend you go onto Chabad.org and put down how to make Shabbat special for your family. Buy board games. There are things, I don't know. Okay, so yes, it's hard now. There's no shul, there's no guests, but try to make an extra effort. Set your table glamorous. I have a friend in LA. Her name is Devorah Leah Wagshul. I'm going to give her a shout out right here. Every Shabbat, she lays a theme at her table. There's always a different theme. Now, this past Friday, Shabbat was Rosh Chodesh Adar. So what did she do? She set her whole table with a Purim theme. She put these beautiful, sparkly table things, and every table had a cloth napkin, and the napkin holder was the shape of a crown for King Achashverosh. And she had these glass goblets from the Purim party, and she made her Shabbos table beautiful. And every child had to prepare a special Dvar Torah. They have costumes, and the children can dress up in costumes when you have dressing up for Dvar Torah. Make your Shabbos special. Don't make the rest of the week with the beautiful food. You could serve mac and cheese and pizza and meatballs and spaghetti. But Shabbos, like Becky says, it's Shabbos candy. It's desserts. It's the most beautiful dishes. Don't put out paper plates. Put out your gorgeous plates. In fact, I went through I'm not boasting here, but I'm telling you, I know what you're going through. I have 8 children. I had to make Shabbos for them. I put out my china. I went through hundreds of glasses because my children, I want them to have their drinks on Shabbat in glass cups. They used china, and the china broke, and I lost so much cutlery. But you know what? That's what we do for Shabbat. When you want to make your Shabbos special, you bring it all out. You know, any one of you, we all have special goals we want for our children. And if it's important to us, we are going to make it very special for our children. We'll make Shabbat special. I had a little boy who walked in today with a headband, and the father says, Mendel has a headband here for Chayala, because Chayala left it at his house. And he was doing the mitzvah Shabbos Aveda, and little Mendel walked into school today. I never saw him walk into school with that, because my father just complimented me at the door. I am doing Hashavas Aveda. I am returning a lost item. My friends, we have to show our children what we love. If we walk around saying, oh, it's hard to be a Jew, our kids are going to pick up on that. And Shabbos will be hard, and being Jewish is hard. But if we share stories at the Shabbos table about great Jewish heroines, about people who have made a difference in the world, people who have made a biggest Kiddush Hashem, my dear, you women are called Akeres Habayis. You are the foundation of the home. You can do this. Have a great week.